Now, I want y'all to be real. Have you ever received a piece of criticism that left you spiraling for days? I mean, maybe you brushed it off with a fake smile, but underneath you was heated. We talk a great deal about criticism, but I don't know that we're truly being taught how to genuinely receive it. Well, not without shutting down, questioning our worth, or without getting slick at the mouth. So, whether you're an entrepreneur, a corporate leader, or just someone trying to grow, the way that you receive criticism is going to impact your relationships and your career. Talkticians, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tatiana. I teach you communication strategies to help you master conflict resolution. So, in today's video, we're breaking down what criticism is and what it ain't, why we tend to take feedback so personally, and I'm going to give you a few tips on how we can receive feedback better without shutting down, without cussing people out. So, what is criticism? Let's get really clear on this. Criticism is simply information. It is someone else's perspective on how you show up, how you perform, and how you're impacting other people. It's not an attack, and it's definitely not a verdict on, how much you're worth as a human being. It is simply information. Let's say that you're at work and one of your coworkers says, "Hey, like when you're in meetings, you interrupt a lot." That's feedback. It might sting a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you're a bad communicator or that you're a bad person. What it is an opportunity now to get curious. Have I been over talking? Can I remember anything that anybody on the team said in that meeting? If not, that feedback might be true. We don't need to get super emotional about it. We were made aware, we apologize, and we listen better next time. That's it. But Tatiana, is it really that easy? No, of course it's not. So that's why we're going to dig a little bit deeper into why we actually struggle with criticism. When someone criticizes us, it's a blow to the ego. And don't let it be in an area that we feel weak in and we've actually been trying to master. Oh, yeah, that really hurts. Criticism hurts because it messes with the way that we see ourselves. Let's say that I'm a manager and I pride myself on being a great listener and making sure that everybody on my team feels heard. And one of my teammates comes to me and says, "Man, you shut down all of my ideas." That critique hurts because it's in direct opposition of how I see myself. And that's a big part of what makes feedback so difficult to receive. Another reason why it's so hard to just accept criticism is because we crave outside validation. The definition of validation, it's the action of checking or proving the validity or accuracy of something. We're human beings. We all want to be seen as good, competent, kind. So when the very people that we are looking for that validation from give us a different perspective, we take it as rejection. Another thing to take into account is people's past experiences. You have to think about people's upbringing and their culture. Depending on that person's experience, correction could have been very harsh, it could have been very constant and riddled with shame. Most people use criticism as a way to express their frustration or their disdain. It's not necessarily to give you constructive feedback so that you can grow. So now the adult version of you struggles with criticism because you associate it with shame and punishment. Also, as we're talking about our upbringing and our experiences, if the adults in your life got defensive and yelled and shut down and cussed people out when they were criticized, chances are you probably do the same thing too. It's not that you're a bad person, you're simply going by what you have learned. I want us to also recognize that many of us have a limited view on receiving criticism. Many people were taught to just accept feedback because it's going to help you to grow into a better leader. It's going to take you to the next level in your career. So it was important to you to just develop mental fortitude to deal with it. Now, while that is really valid, I actually have a critique of my own on this teaching. When we approach it that way, taking criticism becomes this rewards based thing. We say to ourselves, "I'm going to take this criticism because it's going to help me in my career." But what we actually end up doing is developing habits to cover the wound instead of actually addressing the feedback. I am very passionate about personal development and doing a good job. And I remember times being at work and going to my managers long before they can offer criticism. I did that because I was a perfectionist and I was afraid of coming off as imperfect. So the reward for me was, okay, yes, I'll grow in my career, but I also avoid the hurt that comes with the surprise of receiving criticism. So instead of focusing my attention on actually getting good at receiving feedback, I just got really good at controlling my image. I completely missed the analytical process of receiving critiques. So, yes, accepting feedback is a part of leadership, but so is assessment. What do we do with all this information, Tatiana? How do we actually get better at this? Wait, give me a second now. Remember, I said that this thing is a process. So when we get feedback, there's steps that we should be taking. The first thing we do is that we learn to treat the critique as an observation and not an attack. Let's say that you submit your report and your boss comes back to you and says, hey, a few of these sections were unclear. That is not the same thing as your boss saying, hey, you suck at your job. Just like your boss was an observer in that moment, you got to take on that observer role as well. When you get criticism, I need you all to play the role of a photographer and I need you to zoom out, okay? And ask yourself a question. Does this snapshot of a moment represent the totality of who I am? The sections of your report were unclear? Back it up. Nah, I'm actually a pretty good worker. The sections of my report was just unclear. So recognize it is an observation and not an attack, okay? And take a more global perspective when you get criticism. Now you can actually hear what the person is saying to you, and you can do a much better job of keeping your emotions in check. Another tip, we want to stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Now, that sounds horrible, but I mean, it's just an expression. I had to learn this one the hard way. Even if that person's delivery was very messy, is there some truth in it? You got to remember, the same way that people are not being taught how to receive criticism, people are not being taught on how to give it either. Okay. But that doesn't mean that the information that you get from them is not valuable. There's an opportunity here to learn, even if you ain't like the way the person said it. And I'm talking to myself. Let's say that you had plans to go to your friend's birthday dinner and you end up being late. And when they talk to you about it, they say, you're always late. That is so disrespectful. Yes, the tone and the word choice, it was a quite loaded way to say that, but were you late? Another tip for being better at receiving criticism, check the source. Remember earlier when I talked about how we are constantly looking for outside validation? When we do that, we end up taking on criticism from anybody. One thing that I've learned to ask though is, does this person have the results that I desire before I just take what they got to say? If they do, I have learned to lean in. And if they don't, I don't take what they got to say. Now, I do want to play devil's advocate for a second because we can learn from anybody, even if it's what not to do. So, yes, assess who the critique is coming from, but also understand that you can get really valuable insight from somebody that hasn't achieved, what you wanted to achieve. Let me give you this example. I remember going to college and getting my bachelor's in psychology. People would tell me, girl, you ain't gonna make no money. If you want to live a good life, in this industry, you're going to need to go and at least get a master's. And I want you to imagine hearing that after you done took out all them loans. You can imagine that I was in my feelings, right? Once I processed those emotions and I got up out of my feelings, I replayed what those people said to me. I planned my educational career accordingly. And look, now I'm a consultant. Speaking of which, if you're a leader in the corporate space that is ready to help your teams reduce tension, build trust, and work through conflict in a creative, movement based way, I'd love to partner with you. All right, so back to my program now. We're learning new skills. We are learning not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We know that criticism is simply information and we're checking the source. So now we have to put these things into practice. If you want more in-depth study on how to receive criticism, I highly recommend that you read a book called Thanks for the Feedback. So this book breaks down the analytical process of receiving criticism. It helps you to better understand yourself and your triggers and what's actually at stake when we choose not to get better at this skill. Feedback is important because it offers a more global perspective on ourselves and our work. And that is important if we actually want to grow. So make sure that you use these tips to strengthen your communication, whether you're at home or in the workplace. I love hearing from y'all. So let me know in the comments, what was one piece of criticism that changed your life for the better? Talktitions, till next time.